So Shana Tova, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. It's, we miss you enormously. I can't tell you how much I miss you. But we do feel your presence, and we feel your davening, and we feel your spirit, and we are imagining you here, and we're holding you in our hearts. And we can't tell you just what a privilege it is to be here, even under these circumstances, to thank God for the opportunity to celebrate a new year, physically apart, but spiritually together. And we really, really feel it. And we can't tell you how grateful we are for this congregation and the efforts that have been done to make these services and to give us the opportunity to be leaders and to really lift our prayers up to. Tov, I want to talk this Rosh Hashanah about masks. Shocking, masks. I know, masks have been like the theme of the year, or the fashion thing of the year is masks. But I want to say the theme of this sermon is not just about what we're currently masking, but what we really should be masking. What should we really be masking is the theme of this sermon. Okay, now, we all know that essentially, I don't know anybody who embraces wearing a mask. A mask, there are many reasons for this, as we know. The mask is uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. For us that like to, run or exercise or, just to talk a lot, it blocks and makes it hard to breathe sometimes, okay? Sometimes even the mask, it can make, for those that really wear it all the time, I feel for our first responders and medical professionals, it causes, a mark on the face. And it can even be warm and hot underneath. And you know me, I don't like to schwitz, so I don't like my mask because of that. It also just covers facial expression. I see my own kids, I know they're smiling under there. I think they are at least, right? But you can't tell because they're wearing that mask. It's hard to see and actually have that face-to-face experience, which is like one of the most powerful spiritual experiences, to really experience the face of God and the face of other human beings. And I know people struggle wearing with masks, not because it's uncomfortable, but some will say we're struggling with masks because our leadership is giving ambivalent messages about wearing masks. I understand there are plenty of people to blame for the issue around masks and the struggle with masks. But we all know that masks are not a political statement. Masks are an attempt to take care of each other, take care of ourselves, and take care of others. But I want to go down to what I think is the Torah value, the spiritual struggle, beyond discomfort, beyond modeling, beyond that it covers the face. Why is it that we as human beings struggle with putting on these masks? And I want to explain it in the following true story that only happens when you have the privilege of being a rabbi and have the chance to meet with people in various stages. Well, some of you know, actually before the pandemic, what would happen often is that realtors in our congregation, in the course of bringing Jewish families or newbies to the area and showing them different parts of our community, they'd bring them to the shul, as if they were requested, of course, in order to meet the rabbis. One of the jokes, one of the realtors once said, we got Rabbi Solomon, they're the closers. They close the deal for them. We do our best, not only to help our realtors, but of course to help the shul and welcome people, do the mitzvah of Hachnasat Orchim, welcome new people to the congregation. Well, I will never forget, one family I met a number of years ago that ended up not moving to the area. It was a family of four, and they came in my office, a husband, a wife, and two adorable kids. They came from California, and they wanted to move to Raleigh, and they're excited, and it was a job change, et cetera, literally a life change. And when I asked him some questions, what are you looking for, a school, all the classic Jewish community. So at some point he said, Rabbi, I want to get your opinion about where we want to live. Which part of Raleigh? Do you want to live in, Bagel Boulevard, or I call Little Israel, or, okay, where do you want to live? So, which shtetl in Raleigh? Okay. So I'm explaining a little bit based on really Jewish community, which of course we're all over the Wake County, but I was just kind of giving some ideas of things. And he said to me, Rabbi, you don't understand what I want. I'm moving from California. I come from, Los Angeles. I'm from the Los Angeles area. We are stocked up on top of each other, where we can't get any space the part of LA we live. I'm constantly running into people. I can't stand it. What we want here is I want to have a house with such a big backyard, with so many trees, I can imagine saying this now, that I can't see anyone for miles. I said, okay, maybe you'll look at Granville County. I don't know. Where are you going? I don't know where you're going to look for that. But okay, for Miles, let's see, somewhere. Okay, Miles. I said, okay, well, let's. He said, no, more than that, Rabbi. I want to go on my back deck, put on my favorite country music song, pull on my cowboy boots, naked, and be able to sing at the top of my lungs with no one bothering me. But, it's a little TMI for the rabbi to have to know that much information about, what, that's what you mean by, I get the idea. He wanted social distance before the pandemic, right? I said, I get it. I got the point. So I offer this, though, because what he was saying basically was, I want to be away from people. I want to have the freedom to do what I want in my place. In fact, the way I would emphasize it in the powerful lines of our country, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, he was big on liberty. He wanted not just liberty, my liberty. He wanted to live his life according to his freedom. And thank God, this is not only our country, but thank God in general, Western civilization is rooted on this idea. Not only that, but the Torah, ever since we left Egypt, we are trying and screaming, let our souls be free. Let us have liberty. Let liberty be proclaimed throughout the land, from the Torah onto the Liberty Bell. That is a screaming desire within the human soul. This man was exemplifying it. But that is what a mask, makes us struggle with. Because we're being told to put on a mask. Not only is it being told by someone externally, even if it's for our best interest and for our health, still it's coming from something externally, and it's affecting the freedom of my expression, literally, freedom of my expression. So what I see this is, when I look in deeper, and I'm the other one to say this, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs says this even more profoundly, that masks are a symbol of me having to limit my liberty, hold back my freedom. And that is a very difficult thing for most Americans, certainly Jews who we honor and cherish freedom and personal freedom, to do. But of course, we're being asked to limit, restrict our autonomy, restrict our freedom, not only for our own benefit, so that we don't get the coronavirus, but for others. And what I want to say is that willingness, not to say that liberty isn't important. Liberty is sacrosanct in our country, in our tradition. We fought for freedom in the book of Exodus. But that we're willing to limit it for the sake of others is also a Torah and American value too. Let me give some examples. A couple personal, and then some about our country, and then one about from our Jewish tradition. Some of you know in our congregation, I've had the chance, and I'm so grateful for the support. I and Jenny, we're part of this congregation too. It's not just a one-way street. We get spiritual support and love, chesed, that comes our way, and it lifts us up too. Some of you know, sadly, my mother suffers from Alzheimer's disease. And it was about 5 years ago when she was first diagnosed. And sadly, her condition has significantly deteriorated. Fast forward, some of you, again, are familiar with the story, but those that don't know, this is an opportunity to share it with you, and I share it with you with love. I hope you'll hold her, and also my father, frankly, who's caring for her most closely, my sister. Now, we've moved her, and my parents are now living in South Florida, the land of our people. Everyone makes it South Florida, I think, eventually, in our people, okay? Where she's living in a very beautiful and hamisha and well-taken care facility in South Florida, where it's maybe 100, 125 residents, specifically for dementia. She's part of a larger facility, but it's specifically a dementia part of that facility. And by the way, this is very modeled. We have examples here in Raleigh, right here by the shul. Members of our own congregation have been a part of this. I've watched as our congregants have gone through this journey. It's an extraordinarily painful journey. My mother at this stage, it's sad to say, and it breaks my heart, and I hold her in my prayers all the time, but certainly on these high holy days, is she's reached a stage now where she is barely recognizing family, and it's challenging to communicate. She still kind of fakes it a little bit, but she's reaching a much latter stage of that process, and some of you are very, very familiar with it. It's very painful on the heart. However, she's having extraordinarily good care. Since the pandemic, 6, 7 months or so, in her facility, the residents have not been allowed to leave at all. The only fresh air that my mom and the 125 or so residents have gotten, some of them in wheelchairs, some of them in walkers, some are able to walk, is there's a garden, like an internal courtyard in her facility, which I visited numerous times. So sometimes the wonderful nurses and helpers will go and bring her to that space. And even one time, my sister, so far, generally communicate over iPad with the help of assistants. She was actually go through a window and to see my mom and communicate with her a bit, which was extremely moving for me and for my kids to have that chance to see those pictures and a little bit of interaction. But she's never left the facility because these are the most vulnerable people to the coronavirus. But 2 times in this 6, 7 months, twice, my mom has had to be tested for COVID. Why? Because 2 times there have been breakouts of coronavirus in her facility. Now you should be saying to me, Rabbi, how can there be a breakout in that facility if the residents never leave it and guests, like family, can never enter? Well, the only people who exit and enter the building are the staff. The staff have to go home to their families, have to go shopping in supermarkets, have to live their lives, and they come to work lovingly, devoted, the vast majority immigrants, passionate. They are angels in human form, taking care of my mother and others. And sadly, they have come down with coronavirus. It's not because they're not being careful. Many of these people are in vulnerable groups to begin with. They don't want to get it either because they have families at home that they have to take care of. They are avoiding it like crazy because they need to come to work to earn their living. They don't want to lose their income either. I am fully confident that they are being careful for numerous reasons above and beyond the residents. But it includes that too. And both of those times when my mother had to be tested, one of those times, it took over a week for us to get the results. For those of you who've been through that in our congregation, and some of you have, but that feeling of waiting 7, 8 days to know if your Alzheimer mother is going to have the virus and possibly die from it, and I can't even be there or our family nearby. And then the thought comes on my brain that possibly this was spread because some people chose not to wear masks because they felt it was their liberty being limited. It's hard to describe that feeling inside of my heart. I wouldn't call it, I'd call it something in prophetic terms. It's like righteous indignation. How dare you put my mother at risk because you won't wear your mask at the supermarket where my mother's nurse has to go for shopping. So I put that out there to say, it's hard for many Americans and Jews to do this, but this is why we're doing it. For all of the hundreds of thousands of people who never put themselves in that position, but it comes back to them because this virus is spread. That's example number 1. Here's example number 2. I could have told you many stories, but this is the one that's touched my heart. Senator Daniel Inouye, Alava Shalom. Some of you know who he was. He served for many years, decades, as a senator from Hawaii, one of the senators from Hawaii. And he died about a decade ago, sadly. Very respected across the Congress. He was one of the few senators in American history to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor. If you don't know why, after Rosh Hashanah, you should Google up this story. It's unbelievable. Senator Inouye was a Japanese American. He enlisted in World War II, and he was not allowed to serve in a regular, read white unit. He was in a specific unit for Japanese Americans. He was in Italy stationed, commanding a unit, and I'm going to tell the story just to the chase. In the middle of he had a machine gun in one hand, he had a grenade, he had a machine gun in his left, grenade in his right, with grenades lined up on his vest. They were shooting up against Germans in nearby. They were having an ongoing fight. He's covering his men, and he's shooting and getting ready to throw the grenade in his right arm. Right from a bunker, right as he's about to do that, a Nazi German grenade came right into his bunker and exploded. It blew off his right arm to a degree, as he described, he looked at the arm and it was connected by strands. It wasn't moving. He said, I didn't look at it. It was my arm anymore. It was surreal. He then took his left arm, took the grenade out of his nearly amputated arm, put the pin in his teeth, pulled it out, threw the grenade back, killed other soldiers, then took the machine gun in his left arm and started shooting for cover while his other soldiers went around. Gives me chills telling the story. Until he passed out. He saved his soldiers. If you remember, for those who remember, he always had like his, what do you call it? I forget, it's a prosthesis on his arm on the end. Because of that effort, and for that, he was a Congressional Medal of Honor. In the military, they teach, it's not about me, it's about we. In this moment where his life was threatened, where he saw death face to face, we call the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, he took a grenade and saved his fellow Americans. He wasn't obsessed with his liberty. He was obsessed with saving others. Love your neighbor as yourself on steroids. He can do that with one arm, and some of us can't put on a mask for other Americans. I find that difficult to swallow as a patriotic American and a Jew. Third story. On Rosh Hashanah, not today, but tomorrow, we're going to blow the shofar. And the shofar that you're used to seeing is always curved. In fact, in halakha, it says it should be curved. And in fact, it's really beautiful, and some of them are curved short, some are curved really long. But if you notice, there are some shofrot that are not curved. They're actually flat. They're, in fact, almost like a almost really like a trumpet. And I myself always thought they're curved, and curved because we have a year that's, curvy, and we've had struggles in the year, and the whole point of tshuva is to wake us up and to help us, become more aligned. But that's not true with these type of shofar. So I had to research, why is that shofar, some shofars? Well, it's very few. The Ashkenazi standard, and they're all curved. But Moroccan shofarot are straight. And I say, well, why? What's up? So you go around, did a little research. Why? Well, the story told of why Moroccan shofars are straight, against Jewish law, by the way, standard Jewish law, is because during Spanish Inquisition, during the time under Spanish community, which Moroccan roots come from, when we were oppressed and not allowed to blow the shofar publicly, they straightened out the shofar so they could put it in their clothing and hide it as they went to shuls and places to gather so that the inquisitors would not attack them. Now, what's even more powerful about that, they had to hide it, so they made it flat because of that, is that the mitzvah of blowing the shofar, it's actually not a mitzvah to blow the shofar. I mean, it is, but it's not actually a specific mitzvah. The bracha is to hear the shofar. So get this. The person who blows the shofar is actually not fulfilling, theoretically, a mitzvah. But they are doing the mitzvah for others. They're blowing it so we can hear it. Imagine during times like the Crusades, Spanish Inquisition, where blowing the shofar could be heard by others and put you in jeopardy. But that shofar blower was hiding it and doing it for the sake of other Jews. Not only that, friends, I don't know if you saw the article in the New York Times about a year ago, came in right up of Rosh Hashanah. There are stories that have been validated and confirmed by Yad Vashem and the Holocaust Museum of in Auschwitz, people smuggling in shofrot, bribing guards, and blowing shofrot quietly with groups in the camps. They didn't do it just for them. They did it for others. They risked their lives for others. What these three stories tell, flat shofar blowing the shofar, Senor giving up his arm and near life for others, my own mother, who sadly is put at risk because some potentially did not wear their mask. It's because in all these cases, this is the cases where people limit their ego, limit themselves for the sake of others, or don't. And either choose life or choose death. This issue about limiting the I, the ego for others, has been around forever, and it's even in our Torah, the struggle. And the story that I find the most powerful is Yaakov Avinu, Jacob. You know, it's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What's up with Jacob? Jacob, some of you know the story. He struggles with his brother Esav. They're like, not getting along well. Esav gets, if you read the Pshat, he gets a tough rap in the Torah. He's not looked at kindly, but he doesn't seem to do a lot wrong. He's the firstborn. Jacob steals from him. On the deathbed of his father Yitzchak, he steals the birthright and steals the blessing. And from Esav, in a time when he's starving, Jacob says, well, I'll give you some food, but give me the birthright. Give me something. And he gives it to him. Jacob's shifty. He's a ganav. He's a thief. He's not deceitful. He's in it for himself. And when Esav gets so angry with him after discovering that he took this deathbed blessing, he runs after him, Esav, essentially to kill him. He's so angry. In the middle of the night, in a famous story, many of you know it, Jacob's sleeping in the desert, a rock is his pillow. He has the famous Jacob's dream of a ladder of angels going up and down the ladder. And he wakes up from the dream and says this famous line. Achen, yesh Elohim, ken, achen, yesh Elohim b'makom hazeh, va'anochi lo yadati. It says, indeed, God was in this place, va'anochi lo yadati, and I did not know it. God was here in my dream, and I did not know it. The key word in that Hebrew, which is, I love the Torah's Hebrew, is anochi. Doesn't say ani, I did not know. It's anochi did not know. And if you've learned a little Bissel Hebrew, anochi is a very unique word. It comes very rarely in the whole Torah. Why is it? God was here. I didn't even know it. But not I didn't know it. Anochi didn't know it. Because anochi reminds us of the Ten Commandments. The first one, I am Adonai your God. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Only God refers to God's self as I. Why? Because Anochi is a royal I. It's a regal I. It's like the collective, strong, big, God, divine I. Not some little pisher Jacob calling himself, who you calling yourself Anochi? Anochi. So the rabbis comment, the Hasidic masters say, why did he say Anochi? I didn't know God was here. Anochi, why? Because Jacob in that moment had such a big Anochi, read ego. That's why he didn't realize God was in that place. Not because God wasn't there, because Jacob's Anochi ego was so big, his I was so big, he left no space for God to be there. In fact, the modern word in Hebrew for selfishness, listen to it, anochiut. Anochi, anochiut, enochiut. To be selfish. The only way Jacob can bring God into his life is when he takes his ego, takes his liberty, takes his freedom, and limits it for the sake of the ultimate other, capital O, and that's God. So let's come back. I started this with we struggle with masks. Yeah, no, it's struggle because it's uncomfortable. Struggle because maybe we're giving unclear messages from leadership. Struggle because it covers our face. What I'm saying, though, I think the Torah uses it well, is that one of the challenges is that we struggle to wear masks because we struggle to have anyone or anything cover us up. We don't want to be covered up. We don't want to be locked in. We don't want to be told that we're not fully free to sit in our backyard and wear our cowboy boots. That's why we don't want to do that. But when you mask your anochi for the sake of saving other people, when you mask your anochi for the sake of limiting yourself, but for the sake of saving lives, pikuach nefesh, you are doing one of the greatest mitzvot in our Torah. So here's my takeaway. When you go into your life continues, and you have that mask, and I've seen people have them in their car, and they have them at home, they have them at work, and they put it on. Sometimes, look, people forget, it happens. And you're going to put it on and say, I don't want to put it on, I'm annoyed, I'm sick of putting it on, I have a 5-minute thing, why can't I just not? When you put it on, make it a spiritual practice. When you put it on, think of Senator Inouye, who gave his arm for other Americans. Think of Yaakov, who had to learn the hard way to limit himself, that this is a chance to become humble by putting the mask on. That's how it takes. I want God in my life, I got a mask, I got a cover, I got a limit. Think of the Jews through the centuries who put a shofar in their clothing and blew it in places like concentration camps for the sake of others, not for themselves, but for others. And dare I say, think of your rabbi's mother. Think of all the seniors, the most vulnerable people in our society that you may not see on a day-to-day basis, but through the spread of this are liable to die. And say, I'm going to put on this mask because my ego needs to be limited. It's a healthy moment to do that for the sake of loving others. In that way, we're not just going to cover our face with a mask. We're going to cover our egos in a good way with the masks. And that way, we're going to fulfill the mitzvah of love your neighbor, saving your lives, and helping other Americans and Jews and all throughout the world in a way that's consistent with the highest of the Torah's values. I pray this year is a better year, safer and healthier for all. But that's not all upon God, and actually not all upon a vaccine. It's going to be upon our ability to mask our anochis. If we can do that, we can help save lives and make the world better in the year to come. Shana Tova. Shabbat Shalom. Good Yom Tov, everyone.